Okay, so originally I was gonna put this recap bit as a chapter in Ren Fair Cheese, the best genre you've never heard of, which is my next essay, but there was no way I was getting that done editing-wise before Christmas, especially because I have to reshoot some things, because the audio got so bad. And the recap turned out to be 10 minutes, because I just did that much this year. So instead, you're getting it as its own video, with some added extra stuff, and Ren Fair Cheese will probably be up February 1st, maybe a little earlier, just because January is not the best time to release a video in. And it'll be on Patreon as soon as it's finished, so expect that soon. Anyway, here's some art I really enjoyed this year, some smaller YouTubers I think you should check out, and also every video I was involved in, there's a lot. So I did not listen to a ton of new music this year. Been doing a lot more digging through the backlog of older bands and artists, past releases, so feel free to leave some 2023 album recommendations, because I've really not kept up with music much lately. However, there are 2 albums that I really liked that released this year. What you're giving. I really enjoy Hozier's work in general, and Unreal Unearth's Death of Disco vibe appeals to me in a similar yet distinct way from albums like Daft Punk's Random Access Memories and Broken Bells After the Disco. DeSelby Part 2 has been living rent-free in my head since that song released, and its music video is absolutely incredible. I highly recommend giving it a watch. The entire album is hauntingly gorgeous, with hooks that drew me right in. If you follow me on other platforms, you might have seen me post
new health album, new health album, new health album
in all caps all over the place. Health's Rat Wars is easily my album of the year. Close second favorite of theirs behind the magnificent Slaves of Fear. Health is an industrial noise band with absolutely gorgeous vocals, a sound that makes my brain feel like... and some of the best production on anything. If you've never given them a shot, I highly recommend Rat Wars as a great starting place. Standout tracks for me were Unloved, Ashamed, Of Being Born, and Don't Try. But seriously, all of the songs are excellent back to back. Before I discuss film and TV, I think it's worth noting that 2023 was a year of major, successful labor actions in these fields.
You're quick to call us failures. What about you, Ed?
Me? I'm the champion of failures.
So I'll be talking about this one more in Ren Fair Cheese. There's a whole chapter dedicated to it. But if you want to watch a fun adventure film all about found family, I highly recommend this one.
But good things happen too, you know? Like you happen.
Across the Spider-Verse is a really great first half of a film. God, I hope that Beyond Spider-Verse is good. If you want my thoughts on it, I was on a roundtable with other creators that I mentioned in the recap of everything I did this year, but I really, really value Gwen as a character, and I think this film is doing a lot of interesting thematic development. The problem is that there's no payoff. It's a little bit like Matrix Reloaded without Matrix Revolutions. It doesn't fully make sense on its own. So I recommend it, but with the caveat that if the third film is bad, it may retroactively make this one pretty bad as well.
The group's over?
No. Well, the galaxy still needs its guardians.
This film meant a lot to me, so much so that Jesse and I made a 2 hours and 15-minute video about the entire Guardians trilogy, so go watch that.
Welcome to our fucking fight club!
Bottoms is a surreal, weird, unique film about lesbians who start a fight club and the shenanigans and consequences of that. I adore that this film fully rejects any pretense of realism, getting more absurd across its runtime, culminating in one of the most wild action sequences in any film I have ever seen, and I will not spoil it. Hilarious, trashy, and incredibly entertaining, with great performances from the entire cast.
I am the only one who cares for you.
I actually remember thinking he really means it this time.
While I think that Abigail Thorne's probably going to do a much better version of this concept next year, I do really adore treating Dracula as an abusive partner and a story about reclaiming your autonomy and agency in the face of a supernaturally powerful abuser. The film has some issues with propaganda that are slightly offset by having the vast majority of cops being openly corrupt, violent villains, but there's just something really cathartic about getting to watch Renfield put his abuser through a wood chipper. It's absurd. It's got amazing practical blood effects. It's got murdering your immortal abuser and dealing with the guilt of having enabled their harm, and Nick Cage is not just chewing, but consuming the scenery as Dracula.
That's it.
So it has its issues, but it was really enjoyable for me. Though content warning for some scenes of very intense emotional abuse.
For as long as AI is a threat, we will never stop hunting them.
While it definitely suffers from elements of techno-orientalism, I have not stopped thinking about the creator since I saw it. I am absolutely obsessed with its very weird needle drop of Radiohead's Everything in Its Right Place. Its cinematography is masterful, its incorporation of a mix of practical and CGI commendable, and John David Washington is frankly on track to being the greatest action movie star in decades. I really want to see him in more stuff. It's an absolutely stunning original sci-fi work which is actually political, and I am still trying to sort out my thoughts on. I'm looking forward to someone else doing a video essay on it. It was really cool to see a mainstream release so directly indict American imperialism and its use of bigoted rhetoric to justify violence that is actually guided by economic priorities. Drone strikes are bad.
I don't know what's scarier. The fact that everyone in this kingdom wants to run a sword through my heart, or that sometimes I just want to let them.
Nemona's my film of the year. I made a whole essay about it for a reason, so all I'll say is please go watch it, and then maybe watch my video essay, or watch the essay and then watch it. It's a phenomenally queer and punk work of art that I found deeply valuable.
Do you love me? Yes. Then love me the way I want you to.
The Last of Us is an absolute masterpiece, beautifully heart-wrenching and human with incredible performances from the entire cast. Episode 3 in particular is one of the best episodes of TV ever made, and it's just a beautiful piece of queer representation. If you want to cry a bunch, go give this a watch. Have you ever had something that you adore, but as you grow up you find out that the fan base is kind of the worst? Anyway, Scott Pilgrim Takes Off is phenomenal. It's got excellent art direction, phenomenal action sequences, and a really lovely amount of heart. Though, only watch it once you've watched the film or read the comics. So I love Scott Pilgrim as a deconstruction of a really shitty guy with fun, fleshed out characters. However, the unfortunate nature of works that discuss certain types of shitty people is that those people are completely unself-aware and don't get that it's critiquing them. So spoilers in all caps. Scott Pilgrim Takes Off is a fucking masterpiece of a rebuild that is basically Brian Lee O'Malley taking the fandom to task for that exact type of misinterpretation. I love how this show really fleshes out the supporting cast, especially Matthew Patel and Roxy Richter, who both get way more screen time than previous iterations.
Congrats. You need to break up with your fake high school girlfriend.
Kieran Culkin was born to play Wallace Wells. I could watch this gay disaster for hours.
I heard they hired a notorious heterosexual to play me.
And him causing Todd to realize he's bi was incredible. I adore that Ramona gets to go on her own journey, reconciling with relationships and the people she knew before. The mystery leading to older Scott Pilgrim being the villain was excellent, and I love the representation of the idea that it's okay if relationships end. They can be valuable for a period of time, and then stop. And that's okay.
Drama queen boyfriend's influence.
You are a pathetic little man.
Heartstopper continues to be a really wonderful show about queer teenagers that manages to handle heavy topics including eating disorders with a deft and careful hand. If you've heard that this show is some twee nothing goes wrong magical paradise, please actually watch it instead of lying about a work of queer art. Just because it doesn't centralize sex, likely as a result of ace writer Alice Osman's influence, does not mean it is immature or seeing the world through rose-tinted glasses. Frankly, I'd like it if more shows set in high schools avoided sexualizing teenagers. I really like how the show balances its ensemble and continues to represent a wide array of experiences with respect.
And Ronnie, I feel like you're just here for the zip line.
I Think You Should Leave with Tim Robinson is an extremely strange surreal comedy skit show that fascinates me.
And you're definitely not gonna get this thing. Because I saw that thing.
I'm not sure what to call what I feel towards it, but it's such a unique and weird artwork that I'm constantly compelled by. Definitely not for everyone, but it makes me laugh and has become a frequently quoted work from my family. They're getting sloppy steaks, okay?
I'm in an academic romance with the Tremble Lizards. They are my passion. Oh no, those monsters are going to f***ing kill us all!
What? I thought you loved them!
Only when the fence is up!
Star Trek Lower Decks is still the best currently running Star Trek show, and it continues to deliver. Funny, heartfelt, and imaginative, I absolutely adore this series, and season 4 was especially lovely. Special shout out to the very trans energy Tendi episode and the extremely weird cave setting bottle episode. I also really adored the Strange New Worlds crossover episode, even if I had issues with aspects of season 2 of that show. You are my special. Do you want really cool action sequences and it gets sad and stuff? Then Jujutsu Kaisen's for you. It's still running, so I won't spoil anything, but the Shibuya incident arc has been an incredible tone shift. I've really enjoyed this bloody, dark exploration of what it means to live and die.
And you've sold your Lempire for a few $1 billion then, and only then you make some fucking lemonade.
So I'm making a massive essay about this show. I mean, it's Mike Flanagan. It's a brilliant examination of the opioid epidemic and the vile nature of capitalism that uses horror and comedy in equal measure, while excellently adapting some of the works of one of my favorite poets and short horror writers, Edgar Allan Poe. It's tailor-made for me. In most years, it would be my favorite show of the year, if it were not for... With its biting satire, brilliant dialogue, some of the best editing, cinematography, and performances of any work ever made, Succession has become my favorite show of all time. I really cannot quickly recap everything I adore about the show, but if you only watch one show from recent years, make it Succession. I'll someday do a video on it because there's just so much I want to say. It manages to make one of the most hateable and simultaneously compelling casts of characters in any work, dancing on a razor-thin wire between making them completely, irredeemably, unwatchably horrible.
I am the eldest boy!
You're not. And incredibly empathetic and sad. It's the most human representation of how capitalism creates monsters of people that's ever been made.
Don't do this!
Okay,
Shit, don't do
hold
this!
on a second!
Fuck off me!
Break it, you piece of shit!
Get off me!
A Shakespearean tragedy with a sailor's mouth.
Fuck off!
Just what a show. So before I talk about what I liked, I want to mention that this was one of the worst years in the games industry's long history of exploiting and harming workers. That unionization needs to happen, and that even if I like the art, that doesn't mean I think you should support the corporations that exploited and underpaid people to make them. I really highly recommend Heavy Eye's video on this topic, The Best Year for Games. Also, I don't have a ton of money, so I didn't get to pretty much most of the major releases, but here's what I did get to play and enjoyed. I would say if you're going to get any of these, prioritize the indie devs. A fun sandbox that I really enjoyed my time with, even if, much like Breath of the Wild, I just kind of stopped playing at a certain point. It definitely suffers from open world fatigue. I just find it's too big. But I do hope that we see this mentality of open solutions to puzzles applied to a more traditional Zelda structure in the future.
Welcome, Isaac Clarke, to the USG Ishimura.
So before I say anything else, fuck EA. Fuck them for ruining the original franchise, and for shuttering Visceral Studios. With that said, Dead Space 2008 remains one of my favorite games of all time. Dead Space Remake is somehow better. I don't just mean it looks prettier, I actually adore the visuals of the original game, partially due to their mid-2000s grungy jank aesthetic, but Remake manages to improve on pretty much every major system. It improves on aspects of the level structures and design, removes some of the most frustrating elements of the original game, adds in several new and interesting elements, handles the regenerating enemies better and in ways that surprised me. It improves on some of the encounter design and density, improves on what was already some of the best sound design in all of video games, and makes me really freaked out by using my knowledge of the original game to actively mess with me. I cannot sing enough praises to the team for doing all of this, but I think the biggest improvement is in the character writing. They even managed to make me like a version of Isaac Clarke that talks.
Gotta always read the manual.
For context, I didn't like how he was written in Dead Space 3, and I despised the handling of the character in Dead Space 2 when I played it for the first time on stream this year, and said on that stream that I do not think Isaac should talk. They proved me wrong. I will gladly and happily concede I was incorrect. I would highly recommend playing Dead Space 2008 first, and then playing the remake, as the original holds up magnificently, and the remake builds so interestingly on it that it feels like a dark and darker still reflection of the original. Also, due to me only having enough space to download it onto an HDD, I've gotten to experience one of the coolest instances of a glitch actually adding to a game. On a semi-regular basis, Necromorphs models have not loaded, meaning that I have invisible Necromorphs that I am fighting purely on sound. If you thought this game could make you paranoid just by its normal design, being paranoid about visibly safe room adds so much to the experience. And I've almost never taken any damage due to this glitch because of how good that sound design is. I'm planning on streaming it on my channel at some point, as streaming Dead Space 2008 and Dead Space 2 was so fun, even if it resulted in me getting very upset about Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, an unfortunate amount of clips of me screaming about murdering babies due to the baby-shaped necromorphs. Where are you, baby? I know you're here. I do not like the baby. I don't like the baby.
I tell myself it was always going to be a one-way trip. That's what love is. It's a trip between who you were and whatever the hell you become next.
A phenomenal spiritual successor and improvement upon Remedy's Max Payne series. The dialogue is an excellent and often funny use of gritty noir detective monologuing. The fights are fast and frantic. The level design clean and clear. I absolutely adore the low poly aesthetic, and it's an easy game to pick up and play for a little bit and then leave and come back to later. So imagine if Hotline Miami was a really good roguelike with most of its issues fixed, an equally incredible though distinct soundtrack, and the best ability of any game I've played in years to put me into a flow state. Fast, frenetic, unique, with power-ups that truly change the feel of every run, Ocho is incredibly replayable, and it vastly improves on its influences, while also doing something that is distinctly its own. So I'm going to go by month and just run through everything I remember I helped with, or was in, or a part of in some way. So I know I'm forgetting a fair bit of the voice work that I did. Unfortunately, I have memory problems, and it's really hard to keep track of everything I did. Just look at how much I did manage to keep track of. January, I did a 16-minute segment. The thumbnail and helped a little with the script for Jessie Gender's I Am Done with J.K. Rowling, and later that month we discussed The Last of Us Season 1, Episode 3 in The Last of Us' devastating, beautiful gay romance. Jessie is my primary creative partner and my sister whom I adore. I am so lucky to work with her. February, I voiced some lines for the wonderful Pim's Crypts, the wholesome Bubba project countering toxicity in Dead by Daylight. Pim does great videos on horror media and did a really fun queer reading of Venom that I helped with too. Jessie and I reviewed The Last of Us Episode 4. I provided voice and feedback for I Am Error's J.K. Rowling and the Limits of Sincerity. I Am Error does some of my favorite long-form video essays on video games, and really great medium-length essays on a variety of topics. I helped with the script for Turb's Why Digital Minstrelsy is Real. I also helped with the script and did the majority of the editing for their video The Yassification of Masculinity. Turb is my other primary creative partner, one of my favorite people on this platform. Go watch their stuff. March, I consulted on the script for the lovely TB Skyen's AI Art is Going to Have Consequences. Skyen does some of the best art analysis on the platform. I voiced Bennett Foddy for Darkfry's Appreciating Frustration with Bennett Foddy. Darkfry is the wonderful host of the podcast Video Gems, which I co-host. Darkfry also makes unique, interesting video essays about video games and social topics. I was also interviewed by Colormind for the Adderall Shortage Explained. Colormind makes incredibly thoughtful, sincere, personal work. April, I gave script feedback for Video Games Are Bad's video Terra Nil is a Game Without Friction. Harry, Video Games Are Bad, is one of my wonderful co-hosts on Video Gems. He makes incredibly funny and well-argued discussions on game design. I released Alison Bechdel and the Feminine Subjective, which is one of my favorite works I've done, and almost no one watched it. If you have not seen it, I really do think you'd enjoy it. I gave feedback on Game Servitory's Crafting Economies, the Means of Reducing Monotony. Jeremy has the most impressive visuals on this platform and is criminally underrated in my opinion, and we have something really fun planned for next year. I did a small bit of animation, provided voices and help with the script for David J. Bradley's The Dark Truth of Peanuts. David's helped me with most of my scripts, and their work is just so good and what helped me figure out my asexuality. Dark Fry, Harry Video Games Are Bad, and my podcast, Video Gems, had its first episode, The Dwarf Bread Principle. I and several other wonderful trans people did a segment for Khadijah and Bose, Won't Someone Think of the Children? The Transgender Moral Panic Unpacked. Khadijah handles difficult topics with humor, excellent research, and nuance, and I really enjoy their work. May, Video Gems Episode 2, Space Necromancers Have a Bad Time released. We interviewed Jeremy from Game Servitory for that episode. I made the thumbnail for Soul Bunny's The White Leftist Industrial Complex. Soul Bunny is one of my favorite people on this platform who says truths a lot of other people do not want to hear. The first part of Turb and my coverage of Jubilee has a racism problem, released. It was actually my idea, and I edited the entire thing. I gave feedback on the writing and edit of Lady Night the Brave's One Way Out and/or Season 1. LK is the one who convinced me to make videos in the first place, taught me to edit, and we help each other in some way on all of each other's videos, and she's my favorite essayist, sorry everyone else. I gave feedback on Jessie Gender's videos, The Myth of Male Socialization, and The Trauma of Masculinity. I gave some feedback on Colormind's video, We Need to Talk About Male Friendship. Video Gems Episode 3, Spooky Scary Feminist, released. We interviewed David J. Bradley for that episode. I voiced some quotes for Jose's How the Talentless Matt Walsh Became Popular. Jose does some of the best retrospectives on sitcoms and a great job of covering far-right weirdos. June, I was interviewed for Think Peace Tribe's Taylor Swift and White Feminism. Think Peace covers complex topics in fun and informative ways. I gave feedback on that Jess's How League of Legends Uses Abuse to Keep You Playing. Jess does some of the best analysis in the games industry and of queer topics. I gave a tiny bit of feedback on Couch MOBA's Why Am I Even Here? Signalis. Couch MOBA does really great work, and as of writing only has 247 subscribers. Bellamy J, FD Signifier, Jessie Gender, Turb, and myself held a round-table discussion on Across the Spider-Verse and how it handles various aspects of marginalized identities and representation. I did some really funny and cursed voice work for Kaylin Conrad's How the Alt-Right Fake Estrogen Scam Backfired Spectacularly. Kaylin covers extremely difficult aspects of queer history and the groups who target us while managing to be one of the funniest people I know, even as they cover the worst of the worst. Video Gems Episode 4,
Albert Wesker will take over the world. Oh my god.
Released, where we interviewed Chipmunku-chan, who has some of the most well-edited videos on YouTube. July, the second half of Turb and my coverage of Jubilee, addressing Jubilee's turf problem, released. I also edited this one. I co-wrote Jessie Gender's How Hollywood Corrupts Trans Stories. Video Gems Episode 5, Looking for Answers, released, where we interviewed the Bobby Broccoli, who creates some of the most well-made documentaries on this or any platform. August, Video Gems Episode 6, Women's Wrongs, released. We interviewed I Am Error. I co-wrote, co-starred, and edited Jessie Gender in my video essay, The Heartbreaking Beauty of Guardians of the Galaxy. It was a lot of work, and I'm extremely proud of what Jessie and I created. I was interviewed by Babilla for their essay, The Misleading Nature of Being Led On. Babilla is an incredibly thoughtful and kind creator who does really fun things with her editing and use of animations. I released Nimona, Swords, Hearts, and Liberatory Violence this month, which is some of my best work writing and editing-wise. I did some voice work for the Leftist Cooks Spider-Verse, Identity Politics, Leftist Infighting, and the Oppression Olympics. Sarah and Neil, who make up the Leftist Cooks, do incredible, important, and well-researched work, and they're also just really fun. September, I did a voice for Lola Sebastian's Hunger Hurts, Cannibals, and Why We're Obsessed with Them. Lola really needs no introduction. They're one of the best to ever make video essays. I helped with writing and also voiced some of my writing for Jessie Gender's Star Trek Doesn't Understand Eugenics. October, Video Gems Episode 9, Nefarious Hacker Woman, released. We interviewed Lee Usagi from the channel Dwyer Usagi. They do amazing horror analysis. I wrote and voiced a section on chronic illness and disability representation and also gave feedback on the edit and script for Lady Night the Brave's video, No Mourners, 6 of Crows. I gave feedback on Maddie Merlin's What is Ken Energy? Maddie's a wonderful, similarly chaotic queer Canadian who gets how to write something like Queer Relativity. Video Gem's Halloween special, Attack of the Non-Binaries, released where Lee Usagi, Pim from Pim's Crypt, Darkfry and I discuss horror. November, I did some voice work for Film Otter's video, How Sable Helped Me Embrace Change. Film Otter makes fun and laid-back examinations of video games and what they mean to them personally. I performed the entirety of Bachelor Dankovsky's Route of Pathologic on stream to raise funds to keep doing this channel by digitally busking.
I am the god of Pathologic! Tremble before me!
The format is the audience donates to decide what voice I use for characters, and I'll be doing more of these streams going forward, so if you want to hear Emperor Palpatine Vlado Gimsky or John Mulaney Daniel Dankovsky, come hang out.
Duties! We're all bound by our duty!
I co-wrote Jessie Gender's videos, The Cyclical Failures of Bethesda's Terrible Writing, and How Barbie Sissified the Matrix. Video Gems Episode 11, God-Given American, released where we interviewed Soccer Tetris. Soccer's a philosopher who mostly discusses video games and has written multiple books on ludology. He's also just a joy to chat with. December, I did some voice work for Kaylin Conrad's Drop the T, The Deadly Consequences of Gay Respectability Politics. Jessie Gender and I released our 5-hour, 48-minute magnum opus on the monomyth, Star Wars, and politics. I made an over 16-minute long short animated film for it. We've been working on it in between everything else for over a year. I promise it's not wasting your time. I also did voice work across the year for various things. I can't remember everything that I did, but the point is I do a lot. I know there's not a lot on my channel, but I'm genuinely the internet's busiest video essay nerd, and I will fight anyone who claims differently. With that said, all of the videos I mentioned are in a public playlist labeled Aeronaut 2023. I also have a playlist, Essay Recommendations 2023, that contains all of the essays I shared on my community tab that I was not involved in, but that I shouted out. I have multiple scripts that are near complete or partially completed, and I'm hoping to finish them all up for next year. The biggest is a currently 25,000 word video essay on Undertale, and it will be longer when I finish writing. Ruby from Codex Entry has been helping me a lot with that, so check out her videos. As well, I have about 17,000 words on The Fall of the House of Usher finished, and 95% of a video that is redoing my queer reading of Tron Legacy with some new things. So that one won't happen until I can afford Molly Noise for the soundtrack, because I have a very specific vision and it needs it. So yeah, if you support me on Patreon, it means that I get to spend more time working on projects for this channel, and eventually I'll be able to make better projects as well. You also get exclusives such as the animated short film that I animated and Jessie did the sound for, and my 3-minute video essay on Passing from earlier this year. With that all said, editing the recap has forced me to go back through a lot of older videos. I even went back all the way to things that LK and I released in 2021, and it has me thinking a lot about change and what that means. To reflect on how much I've evolved as an artist and as a person. And as I look back on a strange, often terrible year, and I look forward to hopefully better things in 2024, I just want to say, here's to changing for the better. May it never stop. And here's to still being here, despite everything. I'll see you, Space Cowpokes. Bang.